This edition of MacVoices is supported by SaneBox. Organize your inbox and never waste time on email again. Sign up today at sanebox.com/MacVoices to save $25 on any subscription. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is part 2 of our final MacVoices Live holiday party for 2020, where our panel discussed some of Apple's decisions during the year, some of the criticisms that they received, and some of the changes that lockdown brought to working and technology in general. And to wrap up, we also ask our panel to pick their favorite Apple product of the year. So we're going to go right back to the panel and let you hear all about it. And Craig, I agree with what has been said. I think that we might have had one or two fewer events, but frankly, I like the way it turned out because each product, and I wonder if Apple learned something because each product got its own event, but more importantly, each product got its own week or two or so of extra coverage and extra attention, and I feel like that. I mean, I think it worked out well because we've often said, you know, at some of these events, things just fly so thick and fast, and there's so many of them that things get overlooked. This way, it was a little more spaced out, and it felt better for me. I mean, David, you agree? It feels did the iOS stuff feel better spaced out?
Oh, 100%. No, I loved. We had four total events this year when normally we'd have maybe two. And I definitely like the way everything was spaced out. And you had each product, and in my end, what I focus on with iOS, you had that focus, and then in November when we had the Macs and the M1 announcements, so it was a really nice mix across all four events. I really was pleased.
Yeah, I liked all the events too. I think it spread things out. We didn't have any better to do, I guess. You know, so why not look at all these events and chime in? But you know, all of us are, you know, whether we're in education or whether we're Apple or whatever, you know, we're looking at our world differently now. And so there's, you know, I think about things in the restaurant business. I think about things that in the education business that we never would have done or tried. And now it looks like some of these things we're going to find out that they work better, but we never would have known it if this hadn't occurred. And so it's really a paradigm shift for us. I do some teaching too, education shift. I see what's happening in the restaurant world, you know, with outside dining. And, you know, how is it that you survive in this type of environment that you never would have stepped out and took the chance before, but now you do?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah,
we've seen loads of that.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point that things got tested because of this pandemic that would never have gotten tested before, and now I wonder because to your
that's
point,
been true in a lot of industries.
Absolutely, but to your point, Craig, I think a lot more people actually watched the Apple events because they were short term. Not short term, but they were not 2.5-hour marathons. They were these nice, tight, concise little entertainment pieces that delivered the information. And we all know how Apple likes to control things. And I think Apple was able to control the message better than they ever have before.
I think you blew Guy's mind there just now.
Have a stroke there? Or
he's like, the control.
Yeah.
We know how attention spans are. So especially for those in education, we only get about 50 minutes. And then we're off, you know.
I feel like the pandemic became a force multiplier on innovation because we figure out a way to do this, even if it's clunky or we don't do it at all, and not doing it is not an option. And I feel like that forced a lot of people into things that they may not have otherwise considered, tried, expended the right amount of effort on. You know, I tried it and it was too hard, and so I gave up. You know, that's obviously not for me. Like when you don't have the option of that's not for me, like you have to do whatever it is that you need to do to make that work for you. And I think that there's a lot of what happened this year to a lot of people who I will say up front are not me because I've been working from home in this room for years. So like everybody else having to work from home was kind of fun to watch my timeline sort of go, wow, you really do have to get up and get dressed for work every day or you just don't feel like it. And I'm like, yeah, 2012 Kelly applauds you for coming to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Like,
I was really worried about the amount of time I spent on Zoom in January. I remember having this thought of like, my life is slowly becoming all about being on Zoom.
I remember.
I guess it's okay because I have a trip to California planned and it means I can meet everyone but one client remotely, but okay. And then world ended and now I live on Zoom.
I remember you being like, I spend a lot of time on Zoom.
Yeah. Maria?
Yeah.
Marina?
Well, I was going to say that it's all well and good for people like we are here because, without realizing it, we've been kind of, well, in some cases getting ready, in Kelly's case and in Brittany's case, living this life for many years. And it's like, hey, I do know what a VPN is, but, the reality is, and this is sort of the other side of, what this pandemic has demonstrated is, internet access in this country is atrocious.
Oh, it's a joke.
Oh, gosh.
In
most places. And,
are you really glad that we removed that thing that we were going to try to treat internet like an essential utility? I'm really happy we got rid of that.
Well, and even before we got rid of that, I live in Michigan.
It was bad.
Right. And look, I live in Michigan. I live in Ann Arbor, which is like east side of the state, which is a decent sized city. But if you're driving, you're taking the train like across the state towards Chicago. Back when we traveled, like 15 minutes out of here, you have no LTE whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the cable access just doesn't exist. And yet another thing that my college had to do is they basically they were mailing like little cell reception towers to students who were at home. To rural Michigan, and in some places they couldn't even reach them with that, and so some of our instructors got a request like, "Can you put your lectures on a thumb drive and mail them to me?"
Yeah.
I have a client who's a teacher in, a very rural area, not college. So, things that should theoretically be provided to them by the state. and it's been a real struggle, like what she can actually reasonably expect of her students.
Yeah.
Because they don't all have reliable enough internet to show up on a video call, but they're expected to anyway.
Well, that's, first of all, the video call thing I think is really interesting because I tried to get video calls implemented for business for I don't know how long. And it was like,
I bet you did.
Yeah, okay. And all of a sudden, now everybody had to do it.
Yeah.
And so
that's what I mean.
Paid attention.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
But the other thing, let's keep this in perspective. What if this had happened, the pandemic, what if this had happened 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago? We have a lot tougher. We have the technology that at least got us by. Certainly there were rough spots and there were places that
3 years ago, we would have just been more advanced today. But
we'd have been on Skype, y'all. We'd have been on Skype.
I was on Zoom 3 years ago.
Not everyone was.
Not just Zoom perceived 3 years ago, but like actual 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It existed as a thing, and I used it because if it was a technology client, we were using it because I didn't want to have to walk them through a thing.
Yeah.
But 10 years ago would have been a different thing. 20 years ago would have been ridiculous.
Exactly. It would have been.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Who remembers what? See You, See Me? I remember using that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, you were looking at a thumb-sized image of, and that was a 1-to-1, trying to do any more than that. And it was horrendous. So,
if there's together. Oh gosh.
If there's something to be happy about, it's this. That we've been able to keep on doing what we've done for the most part. I know there are businesses out there that are hurting, and I absolutely have the utmost sympathy for them. But at least our world was able to keep on advancing.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a biologist perspective, but if it had been long enough ago, Chuck, we would have made a different choice about our payoff to safety ratio.
That too.
Specifically, Brittany.
No, there's no online school. Either you're going and you're going to risk infection, or we're going to have school at home. That's it. Those are your choices. Right. And actually, it turns out with this disease, maybe it's not as bad as we thought it would be in schools, but still, it's creepy with the long incubation period. And anyway, we would have made a different choice. And it might have resulted in more hospital overcrowding. It might have done that, but we would have made a different choice about how to strike that balance because we wouldn't have had as many options. It was long enough ago.
20 years ago, I feel pretty comfortable saying that wearing a mask would not have been a political issue either. Not to drag that into it, but that would not have been a thing where everybody gets to decide for themselves if they are emotionally prepared to put a mask on their face. Everybody would have just gone, we all need to do this for March, April, and May, because then the kids are out all summer, and then we can send everybody back to school in September. And if everybody did it all the time, we would have been fine. We know that now anyway. That's what would have happened. And it wouldn't have been more of this same sort of, it wouldn't be the situation that we're in now, because
human beings are very good at being divisive. I believe in our ability to get political about lots of stuff that doesn't need to be.
Absolutely.
I have complete faith in humanity's ability to do that at any point in time.
But 20 years ago, I don't think we would have been quite as, we would not have been divided on a fundamental level the way we are now. And so it would have been a much easier sell to get people to just go wear a mask, and they just said, okay.
But the technology part would have been very different.
What happened after 9/11?
Yes.
Look what happened after 9/11.
I'm with Guy. 20 years ago was like, I was voting then.
Yeah.
It would have been still politicized. You can convince me that 25 years ago, because I didn't follow anything then. But
but also, like, after 9/11, like, there was a lot more unity there for, like, maybe half an hour. Like, everybody kind of came together and, like, put all the petty stuff aside and was able to all go,
Some
yes,
people did.
It's a good idea to do the thing. But by and large, like, the division, like, the pie chart of America then was not split up and down the middle. It was split, like, there was a little sliver.
I don't know if I agree with
that.
I think back to the election of 2000, and that was very divisive.
Yes, it was.
I voted in most of the elections that didn't win the popular vote.
Hanging Chad.
Right after 9/11.
And I'm the youngest person on here.
all of the crap that everybody was so upset about after the 2000 election just kind of went away.
That's what I mean.
We had something else to think about.
Right.
Briefly.
Yeah. Right. Like I said, it was like half an hour, but like it happened. And I remember
we had a half an hour this year too. Like,
we did.
We're all stuck at home, and this sucks for everybody. This is before anybody had any access to masks.
No, it did.
No.
Like the first week of March.
No. I'm interested.
Well, maybe not first. So no, first week of March things were still open. So mid-March, so like in Michigan, shutdown orders came out, and pretty soon after that, guys with rifles and no masks were attacking the Michigan State House. Yeah. So I think it wasn't like that they.
I was going to say it was like the second week of March
for a while. Yeah, but there was no coming together.
No,
not for a second.
No. But that's
interesting.
Who America is now in 2020 is not who we were 5 years ago.
Let's pull this back to tech. Let's pull this back to tech.
Well, I was going to say either we weren't that America, or we just weren't quite as online and interconnected back then, so we could just ignore each other more easily.
That's valid.
I like you.
I don't know about ignore, but I think that we could continue to do business a lot more like business was done. It just, we could do it instead of face to face. You were doing it face to screen as opposed to just email and phone calls, and I think that helped a lot.
But there was also a lot less disinformation. I just need to put that out there. There was a lot less disinformation going around. On that scale.
We're not doing politics. Let's not go there.
No, this has nothing to do with politics. Technology made it very easy to amplify information that is not true. The
yes.
end.
Okay. Okay.
So
the end. Good.
back when
Let's-
we, like 5 years ago,
right.
when we were talking
I
about
get it,
that
Kelly.
was harder to do. So that's all.
Let's stop it. That's it.
I'm done.
No more
I'm done, Chuck.
politics.
I'm done, Chuck.
But the technology part, Marina, how would your education part have handled it without the ability to do the online learning? I mean, what could have been done?
I mean, I have no idea. I think we would have tried to do. I mean, it's a difficult hypothetical game to play, right? Because if we're sort of stepping back before we had the technology, or also stepping back our ability to do, rapid, gene sequencing and the biological and epidemiological studies and data crunching that allowed us to figure out, sooner rather than later that masks were useful and ventilation is important and, things like that. So I don't know. I mean, we would have carried on. I was, in March, I was reading some history about what the University of Michigan has done during the 1918 pandemic. And it did have a pretty bad, I mean, they didn't stop classes or anything like that. And they did have a pretty noticeable second wave, but it apparently didn't get as bad here as it as in other parts of the country, in Pennsylvania in particular. I honestly don't know what we would have done. I mean, we might have just put some of the educational things on hold. Maybe we would have rescheduled some of the sort of winter semester for the summer so we could do more things outside. Maybe. It's hard to imagine. I mean, we certainly wouldn't have been doing what we were doing. And, there are some places in the university where, you can do certain things remotely. We have a performing arts school here, and, they need rehearsal spaces. They, you can't play a tuba in a one-bedroom apartment. You have to go to a
but everybody in the
space.
building will hate you.
You can, but you don't get to live there very long.
Not for very long, yeah. There's
it's interesting what Maria. Yeah, I think it's interesting what Maria had said earlier about the lack of broadband access in rural communities. And I know when we first started into the, schools out, how do we get to those kids that don't have that access, even in not maybe so rural areas? I mean, they had school buses going out there with Wi-Fi parked in neighborhoods. I remember when it first happened, I said, how do we get to these kids that don't have the hardware? And if they did have the hardware, they don't have the access. They don't have internet access. And so you had teachers actually making packets and delivering them to students in their at their home, and then picking them up at the end of the week and, scoring them. And it went on for a short period of time until we could start to figure out how we can provide broadband access or some sort of Wi-Fi access, and school bus was an alternative, and others. How can we get them the access that we don't have to hand deliver things to the house and pick it up? But they were doing packets probably for a couple months. Probably the school let out, and
my client's still doing those. Yeah.
Well, my father back in the 80s in the Soviet Union was started up one of the first correspondence, one of the first companies doing prep for college admissions tests by mail, believe it or not. And, it was a big country, and he was running it out of Moscow, and they had students all over the country. They were like sending problem sets to Siberia, and people were sending their solutions back. So, it goes a way back, but, it's a little easier, I think, to teach, high school algebra and calculus to people who are not doing this for a grade, but they're doing it to prepare to be able to take a real test later, as opposed to, teaching, teaching continuously, a lot of complicated subjects. But, this is a big university, and it's not, the kind of stuff I do is basically mathematics, applied mathematics. So I can pretty easily give a lecture, on Zoom with my iPad as a whiteboard. Now, my jokes apparently are not as funny when I'm and people are listening to me at 1.5 speed, but it goes by a lot faster. But we have.
I can actually see a math. Like, I know, of course, I have specific learning differences that are neurodiverse, but I never heard a math lecture, like actually could process it verbally until after I tried to do the homework. So I actually can see a use case for math. And I was actually a very, very good math student. but the first time I heard the material, woo, until I'd actually tried it. And so having access to the lecture after the fact would have been super useful to me.
Yes.
Today's MacVoices is supported by SaneBox, AI for your email. SaneBox is one of those utilities that I use every day, multiple times each day, because I use email multiple times each day. There are few things worse than missing an important email because it got lost in the sea of junk and marketing emails that comes in every day. With SaneBox, whenever I look at my inbox, I know that what I'm seeing is what is important, what should be dealt with first. When I have time later in the day or evening, I can check the Sane Later folder to see everything else that's come in. And boy, does a whole lot come in that doesn't deserve my attention. And if something isn't where you want it, just move it to where you do want it. SaneBox sees what you did, remembers it, and future emails from that sender will be sent to where you decided you wanted them. If you know how to use email, you know how to use SaneBox. You know your inbox. Now you know the Sane Later folder. But that's not all. The Sane Black Hole is where you can put emails that you never want to hear from. Once you black hole a message, that sender will never bother you again. Turn on the Sane News folder so that all of your email newsletters go to one place where you can find and read them at a time of your choosing. Or maybe you want to have an email arrive in your inbox on a specified date. Get that show ticket back in your inbox by forwarding it to a monthday@sanebox.com email address, and it will reappear on the date you designate. There's so much you can do with SaneBox. Visit sanebox.com/MacVoices now to find out all about it and get $25 off their subscription packages. Sanebox.com/MacVoices to take control of your email and get $25 off any subscription package to boot. Sanebox.com/MacVoices. Do it now. Thanks to SaneBox for their support of MacVoices.
But you know what's funny? So when was this? 2000. When did the first SARS? No, not SARS. N1H9.
H1N1 was like
2002,
8, 9.
No, that was
2008, maybe 12. But anyway, so this was happening during the fall semester. It was about 10 years ago, maybe a little more. So, and our, it wasn't quite as bad. It didn't turn out to be quite as bad as people were afraid. But one of the things our university was telling us is, please do whatever you can to discourage your students from coming on campus if they're sick. Just, do whatever you can to kind of discourage presenteeism.
So funny.
And it's, kind of looking back at it, it's kind of amazing because the college, it wasn't university-wide yet, but almost all the classrooms in the College of Engineering in my university over the previous year or two have installed these lecture capture systems, which was basically a pretty good quality camera that was hanging off the ceiling, pointing at the front of the room. And it was simultaneously recording on video and the feed from either the overhead projector or the dock camera. And so, and they made it incredibly easy to use it. So basically, if you were the instructor, you could just email the IT office and say, I teach such and such a class. We meet, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10:30 to noon. I want them recorded. And they just set everything up. So, Yeah. It's like we're still using it. They upgrade the equipment every 5 or 6 years to higher quality, etc. And nobody uses overhead dock cameras anymore. So it's just the projector, overhead projector. So and so they, and so when the university was telling us, do whatever you can to make sure these kids don't wake up and feel kind of lousy, but they feel they should go to class anyway. So I just started recording my lectures, and I've been recording them for 10 years anyway.
That's
That is so
fantastic.
cool. For anybody who
is good.
doesn't know, I know exactly one place in Michigan, and it's Ann Arbor, because it's, at least
There
in
is
my
only one
field,
place
a
in
big
Michigan.
deal. It's a really, really big deal, educationally speaking. And I never got tested, but I think I had H1N1, and I was so sick, I didn't know how sick I was, and I went back to school because I felt like I should be getting my stuff done. It was in the middle of that, so I think it was that, because I've never been that sick before, that I didn't know I was sick still. Because I was just completely out of it. And I totally went back to class because I was like, oh, it's been a few days. I guess I'm better now. I'll go to school.
Well, but that sounds like what happens in the workplace.
Yeah.
Where you know, I don't have sick days, or I don't want to use my sick days, even though I'm sick. So
And I didn't want to miss anything.
Right. And I'm going to go in with a fever, and I'm going to infect all my other co-workers because I don't think I should be off or don't want to be off. And that's just bad. Hey, guys,
I love that there was a solution that early. I mean, okay, the last time I tried to take an online class was like late last century, early this century. And it was a train wreck. And if I had been a student still this year, I would have dropped out and just said, I'll go back to school later, because I know that that's not good. But like for a one-off like this, that's brilliant.
Yeah. No, it's been great.
We're starting to run short on time, and there was one last thing I want to make sure we had time for. I want to go around the room, and I want you all, and I'm going to give you a second to think about it if you need it, but I want you to vote for your favorite Apple product this year, whether it's an upgrade, whether it's a new product, the one that meant the most to you, or just whatever reason that you would pick it. I want you to pick the best and your favorite Apple products for the year. And we don't have a lot of time for a lot of commentary. If you want to do a 2 or 3 sentence about this is why, that's great. But, and I'm going to try to keep the same order as I did. We'll see how that works out. Guy, you're up first.
M1 Mac Mini, without a question. The M1, the whole M1 line has completely changed the landscape of computing. And the fact that the M1, all these computers with M1s are faster than everything else Apple has put out, aside from the iPad Pro and
that anyone has
Mac
put
Pro,
out,
I think has just blown people's minds. And I mean, I had a 2017 4.3 gigahertz iMac that is now gathering dust on the wall over there, with my 2 beautiful Dell 27-inch monitors connected up to this Mac Mini, and I'm astounded at the power of this machine.
Okay, good. Let's see. David, you're second.
It's a tie. Well, I will also say the M1 Mac Mini, only because I just got it and I'm blown away about it. So, I agree everything that Guy said about that. But iPhone 12 Pro Max is right there with it. I think what Apple did with it is amazing. The LiDAR cameras, the updated camera lenses, the speed, it just amazing. So those are both ties for me for this year.
Okay, good. Craig, jump in. What do you think?
Sticking with the mini theme, I like the 12 mini. Just kind of brought back that small form factor. I've gone big and I've gone small. In fact, I went big too. I also got the 12 Pro Max because I got work and personal photos. So I'm on both extremes, but I really like, and I like that first SD they came out with and that small factor. I did go with but the second SE was, obviously a little larger, but I'll stick with the mini theme and go with iPhone 12 mini.
Interesting. Marina?
Well, it's interesting. So there are a lot of things I like about the new phone and the new watch, which I both have, but I have to say they sort of kind of evolved in a way that I kind of expected them to. And so I think my win goes with the smart keyboard folio for the iPad, coupled together with the trackpad and keyboard support for iPad OS. not just because it's so great in terms of like tactile feeling. It's probably currently my favorite keyboard. I wish my other keyboards were exactly like it, but also just because of the element of surprise that, you know, it came out, it works so great, and it just wasn't something I was expecting. And so I think that's my winner.
Okay, good. Kelly?
I think I'm gonna have to say the iPad, the regular iPad, the mere mortal iPad that we got, and I'm saying that because it comes in at like $350. I think the entry level iPad is $350, and I can finally recommend the entry level iPad. They've closed the gap between the iPad and the Air and the Pro. Like, if you really need a Pro, you know you need a Pro, and you're going to spend that. And it used to be like I would tell people, you have to get an Air because like the regular iPad isn't enough anything for anybody. I don't know why it's there in the lineup. It feels like a placeholder. It's not what it should be, because it's like an iPad Touch with a great big screen. And then, you know, and then you can get like an actual iPad by going and getting an iPad Air or an iPad Pro, depending on what your needs are. And so the pencil support, like Marina talked about earlier, is a killer feature of that. And being able to get somebody into a computer, which is what it is. I know we've talked about those ads.
What the computer?
Getting someone into a computer, which is an upgrade from a 5, 8, 10-year-old computer, whatever it may be,
Yes.
for $350. And you don't need anything extra. If you want a keyboard, you can have it. If you want other stuff, you can do that. But to be able to upgrade to something that's faster, that's easier to use than the thing that you have that's 10 years old, that's going to have the horsepower to last you until you can't get OS updates for it anymore, and then it's time to buy a new one. Like, the iPad is finally a competitor with the other two products. It always felt like something that needed to be dismissed until they updated it this year. So even though I have an M1 13-inch MacBook Pro and I pink puffy heart my MacBook Pro, I really, really, really love it. I don't know how they did it. It's magical. I love everything that's happening. But I think I'm going to have to pick the iPad as the best one because they finally turned that regular device into something that was a really viable piece of hardware for somebody who needed a mobile platform.
Good reasoning and good pick. Brittany?
So my first instinct was with Guy, because what will make the biggest difference in computing, like not today, not tomorrow, not next year, but just period, it's the M1. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make the biggest difference in my life because my primary computing machine is in my hand, and I have one that finally fits in my hand. I dare anybody here or listening to use their phone more than I do. I don't actually recommend it, but I challenge you all the same.
You can't. Spoiler alert, you can't.
This is my thing. It fits in my hand, and I can finally use it as much as I want to. Do I wish I had the higher RAM and blah, blah, blah? Sure, but it fits in my hand. And I can use it as much as I want without hurting my neck, which is amazing and awesome. And thank you finally for making one, Apple.
Okay, good. In the chat room, we have in the YouTube chat room, we have a nomination for the MacBook Pro 13-inch M1, which sort of goes along with the whole M1 theme. Yeah. And I'm not sure. Paul says the iPad stand keyboard.
That's Marina's pick.
That's Marina's? Okay.
Yeah, that's my
All
pick.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Which costs exactly as much as Kelly's pick.
That's true. Also true.
It does.
Yeah. And if you get a decent iPad for that keyboard, that all costs as much as as a MacBook Air. So, you know.
And Paul says
it's all like stacking cubes. It's like a bento box.
It is. A bento box Mac.
And Paul says the older you get, the bigger you need. I'm not quite sure. I assume that means screen.
That's true if you're farsighted. I'm nearsighted.
Who said that?
Oh, we'll talk to you.
I can't
talk to you in about 10 years.
My dad never needed the bifocals, so cross my fingers.
I was the last one in my family to need glasses. of all my brothers and sisters. I couldn't believe it.
I
Guys, we're
remember
pretty much-
I was on the phone with my parents, my mom and dad, who are on the speakerphone together, and I was talking to them, and they were asking me, "So, what did you do this week?" And I said, "Well, actually, it was an interesting week. I got my very first pair of bifocals." And this dead silence on the other end of that phone line was so dramatic. I could just picture their entire life like flashing in front of them, and I'm thinking, wait a second, if our child is wearing bifocals, what does that make us? And then they simultaneously broke silence, and both of them simultaneously said, "Be very careful walking down the stairs."
Hey guys, we're out of time, but I want to thank everyone here for talking about all of this stuff. Even though we went down a couple rat holes, I think it was interesting. And I want to go around the room and let folks know where they can find you. So again, I'm going to try to keep that order. Guy?
Yeah, VertShark and MacParrot on the Twitters. VertShark.com is the website. MyMac.com is the podcast, as well as Guy's Daily Drive and Mac to the Future Go that I do with David and Warren on Wednesday nights. Probably do one tomorrow night. What else? Guy at mymac.com is the email address. And VertShark is the thing to look for on YouTube, where you can like, share, subscribe. If you miss it the first time, like, share, subscribe. All you got to do, it's so easy. Go and enjoy. There's a couple of 100 videos there where I say things.
Great. Guy, Happy New Year. Thanks for being here as always. Chuck. It's been a good one. It's been here on Mac Voices Live, it's been a good one. We'll leave it that way. David?
I'm at In Touch with iOS at intouchwithios.com, recording my year-end show tomorrow, and be talking about the year in review. You also find me on Mac to the Future. What's that?
Wouldn't that be Thursday?
No, I'm actually doing it a day early. So,
okay.
But early enough that I will be on Mac to the Future Go afterwards with Guy and Warren. So I knew that was why you're a little worried. You also find me on the Mac Show on the British Tech Network and here, of course. And you can find me on Twitter at DaveG65. Thanks for having me, Chuck.
Great. Thanks, David. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
And I'm still talking to Santa about the route he took to get you your Mac Mini.
We could talk.
Craig, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to promote, but we'd love to know where folks can find you if you want to let them know. Otherwise, go into hiding.
Now's your chance to disassociate from the rest of us lunatics entirely.
And you have to unmute.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, not really a place to go. I'm just CJA on Twitter, and that's it. Been on for a long time on there, but appreciate you.
Wait, you have a 3-letter Twitter handle?
3-letter Twitter. That's how long ago I was in. Yep.
Wow. A round of applause.
That's a impressive. 2008 user right there, baby.
7. I think it's 7 even.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh,
wow. That's legit. You should totally be bragging about that more.
Oh, yeah.
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 Mine's
5, and I still get people like, whoa. Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you so much for coming, and you're welcome anytime. Come on back.
Thank you for welcoming me, and I appreciated being here and allowing me to have some input.
You want to know the truth? I think you made more sense than the rest of them combined, but that's a whole other thing.
So, yeah, but that's really setting the bar pretty low there.
Chuck, we can hear you. We can hear you. I'm right here.
Okay. Marina, where can folks find you?
I am on Twitter at Marina Epelman, where I post comments on tech, Soviet flashbacks, and pictures of my dog. Mostly pictures of my dog.
That's an eclectic mix, Marina, but I like it.
Yeah, I like that.
But is it a Soviet dog?
No, she's a German dog. She's very German.
So many questions.
She's very,
we're over time.
We're about to have an international incident here. So okay. So now we're going to try to up the game a little bit. Kelly, 20 seconds this week.
Okay. right, let me stretch. All right, here we go. You can find me 5 days a week over at themacobserver.com, where I am hosting the Daily Observations podcast. You can find me on Twitter as Verso. You can also find me on the Incomparable Podcasting Network, where I am generally talking about Star Wars, but I also have my own show there called Greetings from the Uncanny Valley.
Wow.
Ooh, very nice.
Wow.
Very nice. Kelly, Happy New Year. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chuck. You keep letting me back in the Zoom meeting. And so I just have to say, part of this is on you, but also thank you very much for spinning this up and letting us come give you grief and or heartache for an hour every Tuesday.
Yeah, well, it's
what I needed to make up for not seeing any of y'all in person this year. Well, except for Kelly, but only a couple times.
Yeah, and it was over there. I was over here and she was over there. With masks on. It was a whole thing. Yeah.
Brittany, where can folks find you?
On Twitter, I am the ADD Liberator. No t-shirt to reveal yet, Chuck. My website is conquer.consulting for productivity nonsense. There's a YouTube link that Chuck will provide in the podcast show notes. And thank you also, Chuck. I really appreciate this. This has been what I needed. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time each week to do it. It's a lot of fun. Folks, again, we do this Mac Voices Live every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Join us anytime. We'd love to have you either in YouTube or on Facebook. Until the next time, and as always, Happy New Year, and thanks for watching.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Jazz hands.
Woo.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.